Back in 1908, there was one place that had still not been reached. We had climbed Everest, we had crossed the deserts, we had reached the ends of the Nile and the Amazon, but there was one point on the Earth's surface that had still not been reached by the explorers of the Age of Exploration, the South Pole. And in 1908, Robert Scott from Great Britain and Roald Amundsen from Norway reached the shores of the Antarctic, and they wanted to be the final great explorer that put their name on the map, put their country's flag into the South Pole, and would become famous. And Robert Scott was more famous, more experienced. And Robert Scott set off on his journey. There was 4 of them, each with a sled behind, carrying 250 kilos of tents and supplies, everything they needed for their journey, 1,600 miles across to the South Pole. And Robert Scott each morning would open up the door of the tent and he would look out. And there were days when he looked out and he saw a blue sky, bright blue sky, perfect conditions, and Robert Scott and his team, they would march for 50 miles. There were other mornings that Robert Scott opened the tent, looked out, and the sky was grey, there was wind, and they would walk for 20 miles. There were other days when Robert opened the tent, looked out, and there was wind howling in their face, horrific conditions, hailstones falling. It was painful to even just be out of cover. And Robert Scott would close the tent and they would wait for a better day. And Robert Scott and his team, every morning looked at the environment. If it was a great day, 50 miles. If it was a tough day, 20 miles. And when it was a real crisis, they would just stay under cover and wait for another day. Roald Amundsen, every morning they woke up, the team got ready. Ethan, great to see you. Amundsen, every morning they would pack the tents onto their sleds and they would begin to walk. And they would walk for 20 miles. Every morning they would pack the tents onto the sleds and they would walk for 20 miles. And on the blue sky days, Amundsen and his team would make the 20 miles by lunchtime. And often his team said, we can do more. And Amundsen would say, you've done your 20 miles, rest and repair your skis. On the grey days, it would take them until mid-afternoon, 5 p.m., but they would make their 20 miles. And on the days when the wind was howling, the hailstones were falling, it was painful, it was a real struggle to be out there, Amundsen and his team would do their walking. And it would take them sometimes until the last hour of light, but every day they made their 20 miles. And there's a story that Amundsen and his group reached a point 45 miles from the South Pole. And they woke up that morning and the sky was blue, there was no wind, perfect conditions. The type of day that Robert would do his 50 miles. And this day, they began their journey, and after 20 miles, Roald Amundsen stopped. And the rest of his team begged him. He said, please, we have it here within our reach. After all that we've sacrificed, after all that we've struggled, to have it here so close. We don't know where Robert Scott is. To lose by one day when it's here within our reach. And Amundsen said, you've done your 20 miles, rest and repair your skis. 20 miles day after day. In this story, Robert Scott is almost more famous than Amundsen. Robert Scott lost the race to the South Pole, and Robert Scott and his team lost their lives a few days from reaching a food dump towards the end of their journey. Amundsen and his team made the journey 1,600 miles to the South Pole. They made the journey 1,600 miles back, and they said that they could have kept on going at this rhythm, 20 miles day after day. And this story, for me, captures something very important about the human beings who are really going to stand up in this time when things are tough, when the future is not certain, when there's a lot of doubt and a lot of worry, A lot of critics pointing out what politicians are doing wrong, leaders are doing wrong. So when I, in ESA, get the chance to sit with the emeritus professors, the professors who have been teaching for 50 years, they've seen 50 years of MBAs, 27, 28, 29 years old, graduate and go out into the world and live a full life. And I ask the emeritus professors, what is it that you can see in a 27, 28-year-old that tells you that that individual is going to make a lasting, positive, major difference in their life? And they never tell me the smartest. They never tell me the best looking. They never tell me the one with the most friends. They never tell me the one who's most charismatic. What they tell me is the one that has their habits of just consistently doing important things day after day after day.